This is how much time you have left to live. Premature burial, being buried while still alive, has been documented in verified medical records across multiple countries within the last 10 years alone. This is not folklore. This is not a phobia. This is a medical reality. And in the next 12 minutes, you are going to understand exactly what happens to the human body inside a sealed coffin, and the one decision that determines whether you live or die. Angelo Hays was carried to his grave in France in 1937. The doctors had signed the death certificate, and the family stood silent as the earth was shoveled over the coffin. 2 days later, the burial was interrupted. Hays was exhumed, and to the shock of everyone present, there were signs of warmth. His body was not cold. Some accounts claim he was revived, pulled back from the edge of death. Details blur across decades and retellings, but one thing is clear. The boundary between life and death is not as absolute as it seems. The story circulated through French towns and medical circles, sparking rumors and fear. Was it a medical error or something stranger? No official death certificate surfaces. No hospital chart confirms the event. Yet the legend of Angelo Hays, the man who returned from his own grave, refuses to die. Across the Atlantic, in July 1915, Essie Dunbar was declared dead in a small American town. Her funeral drew mourners from miles around. The grave was filled, and the crowd dispersed, until her sister arrived late, desperate for one last goodbye. The coffin was unearthed, the lid pried open, and Essie sat up, gasping for air. Witnesses fled in terror. The story spread fast. Some say Essie lived for decades after, a walking reminder that a single mistake can mean being buried alive. But like Hays, Dunbar's case is built on fragments, second-hand accounts, whispered family stories, and newspaper clippings with no official record. The pattern is impossible to ignore. 2 continents, 2 bodies, 2 moments where death was declared too soon. And each time, the grave did not have the final word. The pattern is not ancient history. Another survivor waits in the modern era, raising the question, if it happened to them, could it happen now? Wang Jianxin lies motionless beneath a layer of earth, the weight of the soil pressing down on a wooden box just large enough to hold his body. It is 2008, and the story unfolds not in the shadows of history, but in modern China. Construction workers, unaware, continue their day as Wang fights for every breath below. Unlike the legends of mistaken death certificates, this case centers on survival through conscious control. Wang is not dead, not panicked. He is awake and trapped, relying on a discipline he has practiced for years, meditation breathing. The minutes stretch into hours. 2 hours, according to later reports, pass in darkness and silence. The air inside the coffin grows heavier, each inhale drawing in less oxygen, each exhale pushing out more carbon dioxide. Most people would hyperventilate, burning through the remaining air in a rush of fear. Wang slows everything down. His breaths become shallow, deliberate. Heart rate drops. Oxygen consumption falls to its lowest possible level. The techniques he learned for calm and focus now become tools for survival. When rescuers finally break through, Wang is pulled from the ground alive. The details, including how he was discovered and the exact sequence of events, are debated, but the central fact remains. He survived far longer than science would predict for an ordinary person in a sealed space. His case is not folklore. It is a modern reminder that the body, under the right conditions, can stretch the limits of survival. The question becomes, how is this possible? What happens inside the body when air runs out? And can slowed breathing truly buy precious time? The answers lie in the science of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and the delicate balance that determines life or death underground. Inside a sealed coffin, the real danger is not running out of oxygen. It is the silent, invisible rise of carbon dioxide. At first, the air feels unchanged, but with every breath, Oxygen is swapped for carbon dioxide, and the balance starts to tip. Human physiology sets a hard limit. Symptoms begin when carbon dioxide in the air reaches about 5%. That threshold is not just a number, it is the start of confusion, pounding headaches, and the first signs of suffocation. In a standard coffin, this point arrives much faster than most people imagine, often within 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the size of the enclosure and the person's breathing rate. Panic changes everything. The instinct to scream or hyperventilate in the dark can triple or even quadruple the amount of air moved through the lungs. A single minute of frantic shouting burns as much oxygen as several minutes of calm, controlled breathing and floods the air with extra carbon dioxide. Instead of buying time, panic turns the clock forward. Studies show that a person at rest in a sealed box might last nearly 2 hours before carbon dioxide levels become disabling. But if fear takes over, that window shrinks to less than an hour, sometimes just 30 minutes. The difference comes down to metabolic rate. Panic can push oxygen consumption from a resting 0.5 liters per minute up to 2 liters or more, and carbon dioxide builds up just as quickly. The body's own alarm system makes things worse. As carbon dioxide rises, the urge to breathe harder increases, creating a feedback loop of faster breathing and faster suffocation. The invisible countdown is set not by how much oxygen is left, but by how quickly carbon dioxide takes over the air. Survival depends on breaking the panic spiral, because the first rule underground is to slow everything down or run out of time. 6 feet underground, the coffin is not just a box. It is the bottom of a well packed with earth. Above, the soil presses down with the weight of nearly 2 tons, the mass of a mid-size car. This is not the soft loam of nightmares or the loose dirt of horror movies. It is dense, compacted ground, poured and tamped by shovels, then settled by rain and time. The pressure is absolute. Wood creaks and bows. Metal flexes. Even if the lid could be broken, there is nowhere for the earth to go but in. The idea of clawing upward, of punching through to the surface, collapses under physics. Every cubic foot of soil weighs over 100 pounds. The first handful is easy, then the rest closes in, heavy as wet concrete, cutting off movement and air. Escape by force is not just unlikely, it is impossible. But even when the grave is quiet, the danger does not end with the coffin. Sometimes the real trap is set before the first shovelful falls. Medical error is not a relic of the past. Over the last 4 decades, the medical literature has tracked more than 65 cases of the so-called Lazarus phenomenon, people pronounced dead, sometimes with no heartbeat for minutes, who later show signs of life. In 18 of those cases, full recovery followed. The numbers come from hospital audits, not campfire tales. The line between life and death is sometimes drawn by a stethoscope pressed to a silent chest, a pulse missed in a frantic moment, a monitor flatlined before the last flicker. The risk of being buried alive is not just a function of soil and wood, but of human fallibility. Each case is a reminder. The grave is a one-way door, but the decision to close it is made by people, not nature. Science can explain the boundaries of survival, but it cannot erase the margin for error. The rules must start from that hard truth. Rule 1. Do not panic. Every second of calm saves air. Rule 2. Breathe shallow and slow. Each deep breath burns through oxygen and speeds up carbon dioxide buildup. Rule 3. Move as little as possible. Even small gestures waste precious air. Rule 4. Do not shout or bang. Sound travels poorly through earth, and panic wastes breath. Rule 5. Try to create a small air pocket near your mouth if possible, using clothing or hands to delay suffocation. Rule 6. If you hear digging or movement above, signal with a single sharp tap, then return to conserving energy. Remember, survival underground is a race against your own breath. Victorian England, turned fear into industry. Coffin makers advertised escape hatches, breathing tubes, and bell pulls, devices patented by the dozens, catalogued by Jan Bondesson, all promising a second chance from premature burial. These inventions were not just curiosities, they filled a real commercial niche, with customers anxious to buy peace of mind. The anxiety never vanished. In 2014, a woman buried in Piraia, Greece, was heard calling for help after burial. By the time the grave was opened, it was too late. The same fear that drove Victorian inventors still echoes in modern headlines, proof that the line between life and death remains uncertain. Medical errors still lead to premature burials worldwide, despite advances in diagnostics. The line between life and death remains disturbingly thin. Knowing the science isn't just morbid curiosity, it's essential survival knowledge. In a world of uncertain outcomes, preparation and awareness are the only safeguards. Thanks for watching.